If your name rhymes with Bughuul, you fucked up, bro. Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hacker Slash. If you're joining us again, welcome back. I've never been inside one of these things before. If this is your first time listening, welcome to the party. We are a horror movie review podcast dedicated to telling you whether a movie is a hack,
a total joke, a waste of time,
or a slash.
Totally killer, pun intended.
We believe horror is for everyone, and as such, we're rating these movies with a perspective we've gained from our varying walks of life and the flavors of fear we fancy most. My name is Chris. I'm your friendly neighborhood slasher enthusiast. This week I'm joined by the Superfly Space Guy, Mac.
Bughuul can't hear me over your yelling, Mom.
And the classic horror connoisseur, Sean.
It's something otherworldly.
This week we're honoring the 10-year anniversary of a sequel to a film that is considered to be one of the scariest of all time.
That's right, and if you support the show, you'll also get to hear our B-side at the end of this episode where we talk about some wild home video ideas and what our third installment would look like.
3 years after audiences were introduced to Bughuul, they were treated to a sequel inspired by Children of the Corn. The film shifts its lens from a father dooming his family to, instead, the children that are often caught in the wake. It also trades in the isolated dread of a single family for the mounting pressure of a child's corruption. It continues the franchise's use of home movie horror, this time with more elaborate and stylized setups meant to push the boundaries of violence as art. This week, we're talking about Sinister 2. Who's seen this one before?
I honestly didn't know there was a sequel, and so I have not seen this before. I have seen Sinister, but yeah, I was surprised when I saw it in the lineup, and then I wasn't surprised. Let's be honest.
I actually have also not seen this one before. I did know it existed, though. I just had not seen it before, and I think that's primarily due to the terrible reviews this movie has. I think it's currently holding like a whopping 14% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that. So, I don't know. I think I just stayed away at first and then slowly forgot about it, and it just never ended up getting around to watching it until now.
Yeah, I hadn't seen this one either. Granted, we've done Sinister. We did Sinister again in the rewind, and I'm not particularly crazy about it. This is one of those that I feel biologically scares people. It physically scares people by leveraging certain sounds and jump scares to get you. But I didn't find the first film completely scary. It's one of those that demands more of that like physical, literal response. But I think part of what held me back from the original is just this tired trope of dads dooming their families. And I guess in a way, I was expecting more of the same. I knew nothing going into this beyond the character of Deputy So-and-so actually coming back and being more of a main character in this film, but that's about it. So I was expecting more foolishness that I wouldn't actually enjoy. But I will say this, I'm excited to see what you all were expecting.
I'll say I honestly feel like based on this film's ratings, as I said before, and the poor reviews, I was going into this one with very low expectations. I was literally prepared for this one to be bad. But coming off of the first one and the way that that one ended, because I did enjoy Sinister, the original, I know it is widely considered one of the scariest movies of all time. I don't know if I agree with that. It definitely has its place in horror. It's definitely effective in its own right. But I think there was one big question we all had coming off of that film, right? Like, what's going to happen to the next family that comes across these cursed tapes?
I don't know that I had that question leaving the first one because I wasn't as big of a fan as you. I thought it was boring and just hopeless and morose. And that's what I was worried about going into this because we don't have the star-studded cast. Well, kind of, but like not A-level, honestly. And so I was a little bit hopeless. I thought maybe it's going to be also that dark, gritty boringness all over again. And that was not something I was going to look forward to.
Okay. Listen, I'm right there with you in terms of not looking forward to it. I enjoy the cast that's in this movie. However, this is one of those where while I love this show and I love horror movies and I'm generally excited to do this every single week, this is one of those where I was a little bit less excited to get into. However, I will say that the way that this movie frames its story, we start out with a little bit more of the same with a home video. Then we get into knowing some of our characters. We're introduced to the core family that we're going to be following for this whole experience. And I was taken aback how much more invested I was this time around. And I think, again, because the original stands out to me in a negative way for just like, again, the tired, like father dooming his family trope. This one takes a slightly different direction. And I found that refreshing. Now, I will admit, I do think I was bamboozled. I was begoozled because I think that covers up maybe a lot of the flaws that this movie actually has, because I was just like, oh, thank God we're not doing that again.
Well, I think honestly what you're saying is valid though, because this was different here. While watching it, I found myself actually drawn to the drama part, the actual story going on here sometimes was more interesting than the horror aspect. And that was not something I expected. And it was something I could actually like get into a little bit while I'm trying to make it through, a character, let's say an antagonist, honestly, that I was not a fan of in the last film.
Yeah. And I think that the characters are a little bit more enjoyable or likable all across the board, right? In this one, that's what feels a little bit different as well. But yeah, this movie definitely feels different than its predecessor. It's still disturbing in some ways, but I feel like it trades that true crime unease for a more supernatural horror vibe. There were moments, I feel like, in this film that bring you back to being a kid scared in your room, right? And that's kind of cool. But there were also moments that felt like a complete tonal shift where it started feeling like almost like a haunted house cliche, right? Making this one feel a little bit less mysterious and a little bit less eerie.
Yeah, that's completely valid. I will give this movie credit for holding my intention the entire time, but I think, again, it is that emotional investment I had in the core family themselves and our protagonists, because this movie does a little dance. It flirts with a lot of what we find in the original, and it also takes, I think, what was very popular in horror in its time. And there's a scene in here that, honestly, we'll talk about a little bit in originality. It feels like it's straight out of another horror film. And we've seen a lot just like this that has come after, but it's specifically inspired by a different short film. And so going into this and experiencing this movie from beginning to end, I found myself really just surprised how much potential was here. Again, not perfect execution. And I think if you were to take this movie as its own thing, I think it would have gotten a way better reputation than it being a sequel to Sinister, because of how seriously people take Sinister and how much they love that movie. And I'll say that nothing really subverted my expectations here, but I did find myself surprised how much I enjoyed the inversion of the story and the characters that we followed. More on that in the spoiler zone. Some of it got a little bit weird, but I really liked the concept of it.
Some of it definitely got weird.
This was a continuation, like story-wise, and I was not expecting that. I really honestly didn't know this existed. And so when we're going to watch it, I didn't read anything. I didn't watch a trailer. I just went into it. And for us to bring back a character and like keep going on another path was a cool little thing that they chose to do. And then bringing it back in a way as well to other moments from the first film, like also a good choice, but not too far. We didn't have to have everyone from the first cast. We didn't have to redo everything from the first film. So it was like, okay, we're in the family, we're in the universe, we're grounded by that, but we're also kind of doing our own thing, for better or for worse.
Yeah, for sure. I was surprised by how much they dove into the lore in this one, giving us, I think, both an origin story and a deeper look into the process of making these tapes, right? And I think to what I think you're alluding to, Chris, which we're going to dive into further, but also you're getting it from a different point of view as well, which is very interesting. It's a very interesting choice. What's disappointing is, for me, the overuse of some of the characters in this film, because I'll say it now, time and time again, less is more. And that's what made the first one work really, really well, in my opinion. And I think that this one leaned really heavily into a lot more cliche jump scares than building genuine fear. And despite, I think, being cliche, the jump scares are fairly effective, right? They are like something you're used to, but they're fairly effective. And Chris, you said the sound design, right? And I think it's partly due to the score and the sound design in this movie, but they just give you too much. They show you too much, and it ends up losing that mystique, that feeling of something sinister happening, but not knowing exactly what is happening. And so it ends up being less scary than the first one, but it still has some disturbing scenes and fairly effective jump scares.
I 1000% agree with that, Sean. And let me tell you this may not be a popular opinion. I felt like we got too much Bughuul in the first movie. I think, with a silly ass name like that, you got to look way scarier. And your guy is just like a little, I would say, early 2000s jump scare. Like if I was watching a video of a car driving down a country road and then that face just popped up out of nowhere, maybe you'd get me. But I don't love the character design. Yeah. Now, I do think the concept has something there. Yeah. And this one really tries hard to continue a lot of that discomfort, the disturbing energy, a lot of what feels, I mean, to your point, John, sinister about it. But my problem is that I never forget how silly this man's name is, and I never forget how silly this guy looks. So there are moments where you get Bughuuled, and it's laughable.
Why is Bughuuled and Bejeweled? They're just mixing it together. But I really now I feel like we need to have a ranking for most absurd like villain name in horror movies.
We 1000% do. If your name rhymes with Bejeweled, you fucked up, bro. You did. Like, this is not the energy that you need. Because now I'm imagining a Bughuul jump scare, but he's bedazzled. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that's the guy that we need. We need Bughuul to express himself artistically and not just through the medium of film and radio. We need something more. We need fashion. However, circling back to this bullshit in some moments, and again, it's not even that it's complete bullshit at all, but Bughuul is like a funny jump scare. It's like a jump laugh. Because there's a moment in this film where this motherfucker escalates to malware. And that is really just peak Sinister too.
Okay, I want to go back a step at least and talk about the appearance of Bughuul, because am I the only one who sees the Undertaker the entire time he's on screen? That's all I see is like the Undertaker put a jacket on or something. And for some reason that's stuck in my head. It really takes the sting out of this character. This is definitely one of those cases where Sean mentioned less is more. In fact, I don't think you need to even show him. Just like point to an empty dark corner in the room and give him a sound or something. I feel like that would be sufficient, or like a laugh maybe, instead of making us think about him throwing mankind off of Hell in the Cell, like whatever that thing is called. Hell in the Cell. Yeah, okay.
Hell in the Cell. Yeah.
Yeah. So come on, let's just give us nothing. That's better than this.
I think. Yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying. I like if we were just to keep Bughuul, like maybe a faded image of his face that's lurking in these films in the background when you have to look close. It's something you have to really look for. It's an Easter egg, if you will, within the movie. That's how like mysterious this dude is. That would be fucking effective, right? That would be kind of cool if it was like just you can only glimpse him emerging from the darkness in certain areas or certain times of the movie. But the more you see him, the more it feels like you're walking into like a spirit Halloween and somebody's just walking around. You know what I mean?
For sure. Listen, if this man was a watermark in his own movie, I think I would love that more. If he was the sneaky code that you look to check to see if this video was leaked from a company or was pirated from somewhere, that would be cool. But mad respect to the man who plays Bughuul, because I do know that he takes his role very, very seriously. This is completely a personal thing. There are people who are terrified of Bughuul. I fully acknowledge that. But he is not what makes this movie entertaining for me.
Especially when you could get rid of him with a pop-up blocker.
Exactly.
VPN action.
That's
all you need to use. What is that browser? DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, and then you're set.
Yeah, hop into incognito, clear your cache, dump the cookies, you're good. And again, this movie doesn't try to reinvent the wheel. We do get a lot of things that rhyme with the first movie. It echoes. Some of it is straight up lifted from the first movie. One of the best scenes in this movie was filmed for the first movie. But where this movie actually pays off is in the subtle shift it makes in perspective. because that is the kind of story I wish I could have followed in the original film. This, I feel like if we take the first two films and blend them together, we have one really great film. But where this is interesting is it doesn't just try to expand the universe and then give us a different perspective with the survivors. It, again, to your point, John, tries to give us more of a backstory to Bughuul, but I don't know that it fully acknowledges things that we didn't mostly already know. So it's like this tries to separate itself from the original, but it still feels like it just falls in the same shadow.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I gotta give this movie props for changing the perspective this time around. That's the one thing that I feel like really stands out, focusing on this different point of view this time. I think it definitely added more to the lore and the story overall, so it definitely separates itself from the first one 1000%.
I like the change, even though we're pulling in Children of the Corn very deliberately. Something about it hit different than the first film, and I think, like you, that it was a good thing. It was a good thing that they did that. I don't even know if it's just a perspective change, but this could have existed as its own thing, separately from the first film, and it still would have been a good first film in the franchise. Even without the history of another film before it, it still would have worked. And even though we're paying homage to things, and even though we're obviously built on something else, I think that speaks volumes.
I 100% agree with that. Again, looking at what this could have been were it the first film, if you take a few snippets of each, you have something special. And I think part of that is also this approach to the ending, right? I found it to be satisfying, and I think it's maybe as close as you could ever possibly get to some semblance of resolution in the Sinister universe, although it ends with just about no resolution when you really think about it. It's bittersweet. It's tragic. It feels fucked up. And I think that's on brand for Sinister. Just not as devastating as the original film.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think this one had that same devastating impact that the first one did at all. I do feel like, I think instead it feels like maybe instead of getting something as impactful as what happened to Ellis's family, we get something that I feel like ends up feeling a bit more like sequel baiting in a way. In this case, maybe trying to set itself up for a possible third installment, but it did have a little bit of a twist, right? A little bit of a twist. So we're going to give it that. And I'm not mad at that twist. Is it really shocking? I don't think so. I think if you're invested in the story, you can kind of see the direction it's going in as it's moving in real time. But I will give it credit for kind of like switching things up towards the end of the movie.
They did switch it up, especially compared to just plain old Sinister. I think the problem I have with that ending is that it punishes not only characters, but the viewer. That's how I felt coming away from it. And here, I think they improved on that. But that redemption does come with a little bit of a loss of the bite that the first film has. And so, yeah, you kind of have to weigh it out. It's like, all right, it doesn't hit as hard, but I feel better about it. Is that okay? You know, maybe that shakes out. I think the very, very end of the film that, Chris, you referenced as well, I'm really torn about it because it also feels, anachronous. It feels very early 2000s in that final shot. And so, yeah, I want to talk about that more once we get to the spoiler section because it's weird.
The weird is just excellent placement of this childlike speech for this movie. We're really in a season of fuck them kids, by the way.
I feel like, are we always in a season of fuck them kids? I don't feel like we've been off season. I feel like we're just constantly.
You're right.
These kids are fucked up.
We have not taken a single break, apparently. And I think even if we go to empower them kids in Children of the Corn, it's still a little fuck them kids. You know what I mean? So yeah. I think I'm excited to see what Weapons has for us. But before we actually get into rating this movie before us, Sean, how would you describe that gore score?
You definitely see some disturbing images with these 16 millimeter films and the deaths of some of these families, similar to the first one, right? But you don't see a lot of blood and gore. You're just not getting a lot of it, right? There are some graphic moments that shine through for sure, or should I say, ate through. But overall, nothing that is going to earn this one anything but a medium, maybe even medium low gore score, to be honest with you.
And what about the animal report?
Well, we do have some rodents, and they're all final girls here, but they're put to some work. But thankfully, they come out the other side.
Listen, there's a long legacy of rodents on this podcast, and now I feel like we need just like the best of highlights between Nosferatu, Terrifier 3, and this movie. We need the supercut. But let's go ahead and get into our ratings. Sinister 2 from 2015. Was it a hack or a slash? And I just want to rip the Band-Aid off, get this out of the way. This sequel has an astonishingly low rating and a pretty bad reputation. And I don't know that that's 100% fair. I think this movie falls in line after another film that, while I don't personally care a ton for, is considered to be one of the scariest of all time. It's like, how do you follow that? Realistically, how do you continue that and make it incredible? I think this movie is going to need a lot of time and space for there to be another entry that feels like it earns and lives up to the name. But I will say this, where this movie wins for me is it gives me characters I give a damn about. Because no matter how much I cared for the mom and the daughter in that original film, I never cared about Ellis. And in fact, I actively rooted against him. And maybe that makes it more complex. Maybe that makes that movie more interesting. But for me, these characters are the ones I would have been more interested in following. And now I really want to sink my teeth into a supercut of these two movies put together with some kind of resolution. I think it stands on its own because of a shift in perspective that expands something and runs with something that we learned in the previous film. I think the story is emotionally grounded, and the elevation of a minor character into a lead role is an interesting turn to take, and I think it was well executed here. This movie is often considered to be more of the same, but for me, it felt different enough, and that makes it work as a slash.
Nice. Yeah, I think the reason why we enjoy the characters in this movie more is because we're getting a perspective of characters we care about, and it's not so much centered around the fucked up dad, even though there is a fucked up dad in this movie. That's not the main focus of the movie for the most part. So I definitely see what you're saying there. And this one, look, this one may not have captured that same slow burning dread that the original did. And maybe it's because I went into this one with very low expectations, but I think the sequel is still good enough to justify its place in this franchise. I think it's really not as bad as so many people have said it is. Like, to get a 14% on Rotten Tomatoes and a lot of people really dogging on this movie, I don't think it's really that bad. It does shift away from that true crime tone into a more traditional supernatural horror vibe for sure. But I'm also a sucker for a ghost story, and I love haunted house shit. So although I can't say that I loved the Ghost Children, and I'll leave it at that for right now, but what I did like was that the home movies remain the standout, giving us some new inventive and deeply unsettling kills. And it had main characters, to what we're talking about, that you are invested in, that I was invested in. So yes, they gave us too much in this movie, and Bughuul has just a little bit too much screen time. But even for all its faults, I think Sinister 2 succeeds where it counts, right? It continues the story, which is great. It gives us a little bit more gore, which is great. And it keeps the cursed footage disturbing, which is also a plus. But yeah, I mean, what else can you say? I think even if Bughuul gets a little too close to the camera lens, he still finds a way to develop an entertaining horror movie in this sequel. So I think it deserves a slash. It may be on the softer side, but it still deserves a slash.
This is such a surprising turn of events for me so far. This is it honestly really is. Like you, I saw those ratings, that 14%, and I was like, oh, this is going to be pure trash. It's going to be so boring. It's going to be so dark and try hard and all that kind of stuff. And then we got into it and I was like, okay, what some people probably dislike about this film, I like about this film. There's something a little bit lighter to it. And I think the thing that helps it is the story here. And like you've mentioned, some of the characters that you actually care about for some reason. And no shade to James Ransone. I think he did the job here perfectly well. But this is the film that Ethan Hawke deserved to be in. I don't understand why we had to be so dark and so depressing and so morose the first time around. This is kind of the direction we should be in, but he would not have worked as this character. So it's perfect that we got our two leads here together. I think the chemistry between them worked really well for me. Seeing them on screen was actually more fun than any of like the ghouly, garish horror stuff. It was more interesting. I think the drama, the story, even though it's basic when it comes to like the family stuff going on, I think that was more interesting than anything the first one had going on. The whole mythology and terror of stuff you barely see, and then you can see it through, 8mm, whatever. It was boring. I'm sorry. It was so slow, and so what is how I felt about it. But I think here I was just caught off guard by the fact that it's bad, but I like it. And I think it definitely deserves a slash for that fact, for surpassing my very low expectations and continuing up.
Wow. I don't know that I was mentally prepared for this movie to walk away with this rating.
Right?
But hey, Sinister 2, fucking surprise, surprise, it's earned a universal slash, and there is so much more for us to talk about when we return from our break. Now, brace yourself if you haven't seen this yet and you want to trust us instead of the 14% on Rotten Tomatoes. You can find a link to where you can watch this movie in the show notes down below this episode. And if you want to just cut straight to the chase, you can join us in the spoiler zone. We'll be right back.
This episode of Hacker Slash is proudly brought to you by America's Most Sinister Home Videos, the only home video show where the prize isn't cash, it's a curse. That's right, folks. We are in search for the most fucked up home videos, so dust off those old 8mm cameras and let's see what you got. Each week, our host, Uncle Bughuul, looks to bring you the finest in cursed cinema. So whether it's a backyard barbecue with a side of immolation or family pool parties ending in synchronized drowning, we want to see it. Each reel is hand-picked by our host, Uncle Bughuul, with spine-chilling classics like Lawn Work Till It Hurts and Boats and Ghouls. It's the only show that'll make you question that dusty old projector in the attic. Tune in as America's most creative kiddos compete for the Bughuul's Choice Award, because nothing says childhood like cinematic slaughter. So what are you waiting for? Submit your family's cursed reel today. You could even win a lifetime supply of projectors, pagan symbols, and a curse that you and your family will never escape from. America's Most Sinister Home Videos, where every frame is a scream and the laughs are totally killer. Now airing nightly. Just check your kids' drawings for listings.
Welcome back, folks. You're now entering the spoiler zone for Sinister 2, which has somehow earned a universal slash. I'm just as shocked as you are, but before we unpack everything that there is to our opinions, let's go into those kills.
Well, much like the first one, almost all of the kills, in this case 26 kills, 21 of them are really just the families we see in these 16mm home video snuff films or whatever. And the videos are quick. The other 5, I think, are the kids of the respective families being sucked into the film by Bughuul off screen, right? So we have a total of 26, 21 are on these films, but maybe we can talk about our favorite family death film. Which one of these family snuff films reeled you in?
I got to go for one of the non-snuff film kills here, because bye-bye 2D douche canoe. Like, farewell. I thought he was going to make it out scot-free until we got to that kind of setup. And then to see him go first, I was like, well, at least he's going first, okay? Because he was two-dimensional, but deserving in this case. And then when the other ones, well, we got a couple minutes, I'm thinking, oh, this is perfect. If he's the only one of this group that gets taken out, it's even sweeter. But to be strapped up like that and lit on fire, that fire spread so quickly, it was game over.
There are 2 assholes in this movie, and both of them died. Fuck that kid. Fuck that kid.
Fuck the kid. Yeah, that's true.
Okay. He's a twin brother. He's bratty. He's beaten up on his twin brother because he's jealous the ghost kids picked him. Fuck off, kid. Okay. That's neither here nor there. Let me zero in on my favorite film. I'm not going to go with the one that was actually filmed for Sinister. We're going to leave that on the table in case one of you preferred it. I want to throw back to the alligator kill, because the upside down bodies being used as bait and then getting their heads chopped.
Mhm.
It felt like something that Pearl would do.
Ooh, yeah, for sure. What a crazy way to go. Just being strapped up over the water and just letting these alligators just jump up and chomp you up and take your head off, maybe. I don't know. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe their first bite just really hurts a whole lot and it tears you up, but you're not, you know what I mean? It could be pretty brutal, to be honest with you.
Better than getting pushed into that fucking lake by that old bitch Pearl.
Yeah, that's true. I am curious, though, because I actually don't know which one of these things were filmed for Sinister, so I would love to know.
What would you guess, knowing that it's not the alligators?
Gotta be the rat's kill.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not the rats. So
Wow.
interesting. That's interesting. I don't know what it would be. Is it the electrical wire?
No, it's the Christmas burial
Oh,
In the snow?
in the snow.
I was sitting here thinking
Interesting.
that's the one that it can't be.
Why?
Too light. It's too light. It's silly.
Nope. That was filmed for the first Sinister, and it got cut for a few reasons, one of which is that to make the movie shorter.
Makes sense.
Interesting. Little Christmas party action. I get it.
Look at that.
That's wild.
I did think it was wild to see their faces close up, buried in the snow.
Yeah. I was like, at first, I was like, okay, they're getting buried in snow, so definitely it's cold. You know, I'm thinking through that. And then I was like prepared for like something to drive over them or something like that. But until I realized that they were freezing to death, I didn't realize they were freezing to death. I was just like, okay, your head's popping out of the snow. You're cold, whatever. I was waiting for something a little bit more like gory. And then they died. And it's not that it was bad. I just was completely waiting for something else for some reason.
It was a bit goofy, and I liked that. And I think the Christmas tree lights that were wrapped around them is what added to that sense of goofiness.
Man, that's wild. I do think, I mean, obviously the rats was definitely a crazy kill. Like, just the thought of being strapped down. It looked like their hands were also maybe nailed down to the ground, which sucks. And then you've got the rats that are being forced into you by like heating up this like metal bucket that's on top or whatever it was. That just sounds terrible, because how long does it take for you to die before, you know, they do enough damage internally?
Very Fast and the Furious. Very actual medieval torture.
Is it fast?
Thing. Well, no, I'm sorry. The movie Fast and the Furious, one of the sequels, used this style of violence.
Gotcha. Yeah, it just feels so brutal. It just feels so brutal. But also, I just want to bring up that electrical wire one, because I feel like it looked like they were tied up with live electrical wire that was running through the house, right? That's what it looked like. It looked like they were literally pulling that wire down from the ceiling and strapping them up and like sitting them in the water flooded in the basement or whatever it was. Oof.
You know, I just looked at their hands being bound, and I hadn't even considered the ramifications of where that was coming from. Yeah. And that makes it feel even worse in my brain. I think that's genuinely regarded as one of the worst snuff films in this movie, but that one terrified me. Absolutely not. No.
That one was hardcore. And yes, you were totally right. That's what they did.
Yeah.
And then they flipped the switch and completed the circuit. I was paying attention as this is happening, because that's how I watch a movie. I'm sitting there watching the changing of the colors on their arms, and like spots are forming as they're getting burns through their arms. That's pretty sick, dude. Wild current is coming through the water on the floor.
Crazy.
How can that be the worst one in people's mind?
It's the disrespect.
Oh.
The disrespect in this household.
The disrespect.
Yeah. And you just fucking know. You just know that kid was probably saying some fucking bitter ass shit like, oh, who's paying the light bill now? You know what I mean? Like, this seems like the kind of dad who was electrocuted because he would go off about leaving the lights on.
Oh, yeah. I do want to know, though. I would be very curious to see, because like I want to, you know, we got a little more in this movie, but if we're going to give us a little bit more, I want like a behind the scenes of this movie, because I want a behind the scenes of how these movies are made within the movie. All right. Because I want to see how these kids at their young, frail, little weak age are able to fucking overpower this entire family. Okay. And get them in these situations.
Bro, the answer is in the movie. It's not the kid. It's the ghost gang. It's Bughuul.
Yeah.
They're all lending a helping hand.
I guess that's true. I'm just saying, if I have a kid and they try to come at me like that, I'm punting that thing across the room.
Yeah, listen, there are moments in my life where I think, man, would I have been an okay parent? Should I have done something along those lines? And then there are moments where I watch movies like this and I'm like, fuck that. With my luck, I would have gotten the worst one.
No, this is like a movie. This is Sinister, and Sinister 2 is a movie that you definitely watch with your kid. And at the end, you say, you see, kid, this is a life lesson. You do this to me and you're done.
You see what that
Nah, this is me turning to that kid and saying, I'm onto your shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. If we've talked about our favorite kills, I would love to talk about those ghosts for a second, because that was, I think, a brilliant choice. And I don't think it's going to be clear yet. I know we've talked about this on the show before, though, that the idea of transparent see-through ghosts is new. It's only been around since the 19th century. And before that, if you're a ghost, you just looked like a regular dude. And so the kids look cheesy because they're just kids in costumes and maybe a little bit of gray makeup. But thank goodness we didn't spend all 85 minutes that we get to see them looking at see-through, silly, transparent Caspers. This was a lovely choice.
I would like to say that we did get Field of Dreams there for a little while.
A little bit. Okay. And I was okay with that because I feel like, all right, at least the rest of it wasn't that. But yes, that was a silly little moment. And I was like, okay, we'll forgive it because we're in a forgiving mood so far in the film.
Yeah, I hear you. I have mixed feelings on the kids because, one, flipping it to show the manipulation and the corruption of the child is just such a great move. I also really enjoy the angle of the peer pressure, but those kids specifically fall under the less is more category for me, and I wish we had gotten different from them. I can't pin down if it's I want their interaction to feel a little bit different, or if it's just I wanted less screen time for them. But it felt just a touch hokey, although I landed on the more positive side of it because, again, I'm like, oh, well, thank fucking God it's not this dad dooming his whole family. Technically, this movie is about a family who was doomed because of the dad. They wouldn't have been there if he were an abusive piece of shit. But we don't follow him as if he's the fucking hero of the story. So there's that. I do want to point out, though, that the sound design and then the editing in these films just continues to be a standout feature. I know that these don't get the credit, or they're not looked to as effective or as creepy as the original, but I still find them to be highly effective in this movie. They feel very handmade. They feel unnerving. And it's like this complete tonal shift between the narrative, which has some silly, goofy things happening in it sometimes, and then these sequences. It's like sweet and savory. And I can respect that blend.
Yeah, for sure. I think we're aligned on that for sure. I think the snuff film aesthetic, it still slaps, right? I feel like it's still creepy and disturbing. It's that degraded graininess of the film. It's mixed with those disturbing kills. It creates this uncomfortable feeling. That's what we're looking to see in the Sinister movies coming off of the first one, is like, what are these tapes? Are we going to see more? Is it going to continue? I also think, to your point, the score and the overall sound design in this film was actually very good and very, very effective. They added the perfect sound to build those sinister moments and fill them with like tension and dread, and then adding to the jump scares almost as if it was a harmonizing like tone to it, right? And that's what makes some of these types of things in horror movies really effective. And it's not even that it's just a loud spike, but it's just this menacing noise that continues to build and it gets stronger and then it spikes, right? So it is so effective. So I definitely agree. But I want to talk about one of the scenes that really got me. And it's it was super scary, but I talked about it earlier. There's a moment in this movie that makes you think of like when you're a kid and you're in the room alone at night, and it's legitimately that opening scene where the boy is sleeping, and he's tripping out about the noise that he heard in the closet. And then you see the clothes moving, and everyone's been there, right? It's just the under the covers, but you gotta peek, right? You only see Bughuul's face emerge from the darkness, and the classic jump scare to spike your nerves. You gotta love it. We've all been there as a kid, whether you like it or not. We've all had that moment where we threw the covers over our heads and then we were like, okay, I gotta look at some point. You know what I mean?
I love this because you just got skinamarink. So that's fun. 2, have I ever told you both about the first time I tried Coke?
No.
And by Coke, I mean Coca-Cola.
Okay, yeah.
No. Caught me
No,
off guard.
go ahead.
No, I've never done recreational drugs. No, that's not me. However, I specifically remember because I was in elementary school and I was living in East Texas at the time, and I had my own room. For the first period of time that I had my own room, I refused to sleep in my room because I had been so used to sharing a room with my older sisters. So this room was just like spooky for me to be in. And I specifically remember there being a night. Sorry, Chris, the gasp I just gasped. I specifically remember there being a night after I had had a little bit of Coca-Cola earlier in the day, and I was caffeinated as fuck. Like, this is around the time I think I was like probably turning like 10 or 11. I was no longer in the single digits age. And so I was wide awake and wired. But when I looked down from my top bunk, I noticed that my room is like completely pitch black, but the time on my VCR is flickering. And it's flickering because it had been unplugged or there's some kind of power outage earlier in the day. But you could not unconvince me that someone wasn't pacing back and forth, and that's why my light was flickering. I fucking swear I just thought that somebody was in the room with me, scared the living shit out of me. And shortly after this was around the time that I was riding my bike crying in the fucking driveway thinking I was going to get Amityville horrored and get possessed and kill my family. I was going through some shit.
Oh my gosh.
All right? I was going through some shit. But you describing this scene makes me think of that moment, Sean.
Dang. The mind is so powerful. You know what I mean? The imagination of things that you can come up with and convince yourself of, especially as a kid, is absolutely outrageous. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
It really is crazy. And I think, considering just the scenes that are fucking effective in this movie, I want to turn my attention to something that's way more sobering and less scary. Scary, but in a different way. And that is the scene where Clint arrives with the cops.
Yeah.
Because seeing this child walk onto the porch and piss his pants because he's so scared.
Terrible.
To also see their mom go straight at him. Their reactions to seeing their abusive dad trying to take control, it just adds this like deeply human layer of context. And it makes, again, these characters even more compelling for me. Like, this is a family that is trying to stay together and survive. They've been trying to survive long before this movie started, before they ended up in this fucking house. This family deserves a break.
Yeah.
And Clinton deserves to be broken.
Clinton, as the abusive husband, is probably in the running for worst dad in a horror movie at this point. If your kid feels safer around ghosts and demon entities, then that's saying something, buddy. All right?
He's literally watching murder videos against his will and pees his pants when he sees your face.
Yeah. There's something wrong there.
It's not a good sign. I have to take it even lighter than that because that's just how I am these days. And I have to talk about the deputy in 2 different scenes because James Ransone is just so light and goofy in many moments here, but then also is able to be scared. And those light and goofy moments are great. Okay. So he's talking to the priest, they're going back and forth and he asks him if he's ever received sacraments.
Yes.
And he's like, basically no, unless I've received one accidentally, in which case, how would you do that? So that was just a great little tidbit, little piece of comedy. Loved that. And then his interactions in general with Courtney, I think were really good. But the very first time they meet on her lawn and he just is wide-eyed letting her speak and assume all these things. And it's like, okay, coffee, please. And then I'm going to break things down for you because this is really awkward for me. I love that because it's he doesn't try to interrupt really. He just is like, okay, wide-eyed. Sure. Okay. Let's get it out. Let's get it done with. And that just works for his character. And I don't know why these 2 just tickled me so, but I think I could see an entire film made with this kind of tone to it work really well where it's not really a comedy. It just includes a comedic character. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, these 2 have chemistry. And I do think that on paper, their characters get a little too comfy, a little too quick. I would have loved to see nothing more for Courtney than to just find safety and trust in another human being without it necessarily having to be romantic, although she does deserve romance. So it's complex. However, it's just their immediate like latching on together. It was giving you hauling. It felt like both of them had to be lesbians because holy shit, they're at breakneck speed. This family was moving ready, and I don't love that.
That's true.
But it's crazy to think that this movie was just 2 years removed from It Chapter 1, and then obviously he plays Older Eddie in It Chapter 2
Right.
a little while after that. So to see him actually clocked in this movie for me, like, oh my gosh, I know this guy. Okay. I don't even know that it fully clicked for me when we did the Sinister rewind. I'm sure it did, but every time I see him, I'm just pleasantly surprised. And I think he brought a lot of presence to this movie that I didn't think a Sinister movie really needed.
Yeah.
And it's just, again, that little bit of levity. Sinister, bummer of a fucking time. This movie, less of a bummer, still tragic, still bittersweet, still arguably fucking horrible for children, but somehow just a little bit funnier.
Yeah. I think Deputy So-and-so, I really dislike that name, though. I really dislike the choice to call him Deputy So-and-so. It just feels so strange.
It was a bit that they committed to.
I know. And hey, commit to the bit. That's cool. It just feels strange to say, but definitely really shines in this movie. I'm glad that he got a prominent role in this sequel. I think it was a character that is super likable. And I love that you brought up the confessional scene, Mac, because I wanted somebody to bring it up because that moment had some comedic value for the movie. And it was really that attempt at a confession where Father Rodriguez is like, what do you want me to say? You should carry a cross in holy water and shout the power of Christ compels you. And he's like, will it work? And he says, no.
I love a little dig at The Exorcist.
Right? It's great. It's great.
So like they should make a third movie, bring that tone to it, give it the big budget, because I think that would work so well. Yeah, give us that flash from the end of this movie and then make him survive it. Okay. And bring him back and get him with another priest, get him with somebody with some mythological background and make them fight this thing and give it that tone, because that would be way more fun.
Here's what I imagine happening and it going terribly. Picture this. The year is 2028. All of a sudden, we have the Sinister trilogy rebooted by Blumhouse, but also maybe a little bit of Robert Rodriguez, Quentin Tarantino action getting on in there for some fucking reason. That would literally never happen. But Cheech Marin or Danny Trejo as the priest.
Nice.
Oh my Lord. First of all, they don't even need to reboot it or requel it. They just need to make that choice and be like, this is the new priest that he gets to work with. That's just how it is. And then pretend like the first movie is just, it's the past. We're going to ignore it because that would be more fun.
Dang. Hilarious.
Oh my God, that needs to be in Scary Movie 6. Bughuul needs to be in Scary Movie.
We'll see. We'll see what happens for sure. I do think, man, I always forget about Shannon Sossamon until I see her in something. And then I'm like, yeah, I like her. I liked her in The Rules of Attraction. I liked her in A Knight's Tale. I liked her in 40 Days and 40 Nights. I never saw her in a horror movie until now, but like I always forget about this actress and I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I like her.
I genuinely didn't even clock that she was in 40 Days and 40 Nights and A Knight's Tale. This makes so much more sense. This is why I was magnetically drawn to her.
I absolutely love her, and I think of her from several things, but Wrist Cutters is one of them. Wrist Cutters, a love story from 2006. And so this is, I'm young, still an adult technically, right? But it's only been a couple of years since I became an adult. And this is like a really quirky film. And I was a really, I'm a millennial, so I'm a hipster. I'm into the quirkiness. So this hit at just the right time. But she's got that sort of personality where I think a lot of people, even if they don't know who she is, they're like, oh, I know her and I like her. I know she's been in something. I know that much. And then you look up her IMDb and you'll probably see she's been in so much stuff that you love and enjoy. But every time I see her on screen, it just brings a smile to my face. And I think that worked perfectly here opposite her, her other lead here. I think that was, I don't know if the chemistry is real or not, but like it worked for me for some reason. Fun to see them on screen, but her accent was a little questionable in some cases. I don't know if it was feeling a little forced, but I don't care. She could do a bad accent. I'd still have a good time seeing her on screen.
Yeah, and listen, I think she gives a really grounded and earnest performance here. There are a lot of silly, goofy moments that come across in some flirtatious energy, but for the moments where she is just engaging with her sons, like I think about that opening scene where we meet her and she's just growing more and more suspicious of the place around her. We learn that rutabaga is the safe word or the code word to just get the fuck out of there. To see how much her character has been through, it just made me root for her so much more. And while I already felt for the mom in the first Sinister movie, I was like, there's no fucking way this chick can't make it to the end. Like, she deserves so much more.
Yeah, for sure. I do want to touch, though, on the Ghost Kids. And I'm curious. I know, Mac, you liked them, and I liked the way they looked, right? Well, you like the look, right? I think we can agree that we like the look. I do think they were overused. I love the concept of flipping the script. I love the concept of we're getting the point of view of the kid in the family being groomed by these ghost children almost, and that is fantastic. But I think we just saw a little bit too much of them. Chris, you were saying something along the lines of not that long ago of like, could they have been used in a different way, or could we have seen it a different way? And I'm thinking immediately, for some reason, thought of like The Others, right? Like, could it have been like that, where we're not seeing a lot of what's happening? Maybe we're jumping back in different perspectives and things like that. I don't know. I don't know that that's the answer, but I think obviously we keep going back to less is more, and I think that's the thing. In the first one, we got only just enough of these ghost kids to disturb you, right? But in this one, they are full-blown characters. They're talking, they're guiding, they're emotionally manipulating Dylan, and it almost humanizes them when we see them conversing too much. And it made them less scary, less impactful. And I think it's a great concept. But did it execute perfectly? I don't know.
I think there's an easy solution here, and it's a technical solution. And imagine the same children in the same exact shots, give us just enough backlight where we can see like the edges of them, but then completely dark when it comes to their actual, like the front of them. So keep them in the shot, but you're basically not showing them, and they're just like shadow things. And I think that will get us closer to where we need to be. The real answer is that we need them to show up like now and then,
right,
or to be like off in a shadow and not really see them. But like, go back and somebody edit it and make it to where, yeah, you're just getting enough lighting from behind them to see their outline, and then nothing on the face, because you keep seeing those faces and they're talking and they're giving direction, and you're like, okay, they're just kids, like sick kids, twisted kids, but like whatever, kid, walk away from them, punch them in the face, and go back to bed.
Can I tell you why this movie couldn't be remade now?
Why?
Kids are too fucking smart, bro. These kids are dumb. These kids got manipulated. These kids are like, oh, we just gotta make a movie so Bughuul won't be mad. Motherfucker, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. You're dying either way. It's just a matter of whether you take your whole family with you. It's just a bad deal.
Right.
It's a bad deal. These kids don't know how to negotiate.
Damn, it all comes down to those negotiation skills.
Those kids are going to be like cringe and then just turn around and walk away in this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's embarrassing. These kids would ChatGPT a fucking snuff film. Like, what?
Yeah, just have AI create a snuff film.
Cannot be remade today. Listen, I know in our B-side we're pitching ideas for a third film, and we're pitching what our snuff films could be. But let's just be real that it's not going to be these children. It would be the inverse of like Bughuul is now preying on senior citizens like a gift card scam, you know?
Oh, Lord.
He goes from fucking malware on Deputy So-and-so's computer to all of a sudden being a fucking prince who's demanding funds.
Ridiculous.
Or he's in the Facebook DMs. Okay, we'll get there in B-sides. We'll get there in B-sides. Patrons, stay tuned. We got some good shit cooking.
Oh my gosh. That's too good. Oh man. But I will say, outside of the ghost children being overused, I think though, if I had to pick a worst part of this movie, there was a moment, and maybe I'm alone here, but there's a moment where we get the POV of Zach going through the house. And for me, it just felt off from the rest of the movie. And I get like what they're trying to do. Like, it's Zach now, and now Zach is going to go attempt at getting this family video going. And now we're getting, the point of view of Zach moving around the house and whatever. It just felt like I was playing Doom or something. You know what I mean? And like, I don't want to be
Careful.
playing Doom when I'm watching a horror movie, I don't think.
So you don't want this to be found footage. This movie's literally found footage without being found footage.
Yeah.
And then it transforms into this. Got it. Okay. I really enjoyed that. That's just me. I didn't enjoy Eric. I think Eric was just a little bit too much. And I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm gonna be very honest. When he was struck by that motor vehicle, I squealed. I was so excited. Dylan, I'm sorry that your brother's a piece of shit. Clearly he takes after his father.
Oof. It is such a fun moment because you don't imagine, like, okay, all of the things they're doing here with kids and murders, it's not right. It makes you uncomfortable. But then when this kid obviously needs to be stopped and he's driving and he doesn't hit the brakes, I think all of us were like, no, they wouldn't actually do that. And then smack, and he is down. And I was like, oh, heck yeah. Okay, he did the thing that needed to be done. And I love that. I think the thing that we mentioned earlier is probably the worst part for me. And that is the idea of these kids overpowering and overcoming and taking out their families, especially when, like, dude, his arm is like 2 foot long at best. When he swings a scythe at you, just punch him in the face so that he like can't connect. It bothers me that how he's not even strong enough. Even like the 6 of those ghost kids, they're not strong enough to lift those human beings, those 170-pound human beings up on that thing. You know, they would just fight and fall over each other when doing it. So that is still one of the silliest parts. I think, yeah, I get it that ghosts are helping them and they have ghost strength or something, like whatever. I guess that works. But it does bother me that these, 2 adults are staring at this child with a scythe and are scared and run away. Kick him.
Bughuul, bro. Bughuul.
It's the hold your hand, stiff arm, and hold the forehead while he's trying to swing the scythe at you. That's what I'm picturing right now.
Listen, realistically, this is why Children of the Corn doesn't do it for me. It just becomes, at a certain point, the only thing stopping you is your own insistence to not do something about this very solvable problem. And it's a terrible way to think, but these kids can be dealt with.
Yeah.
However, I do want to say, I think my struggle with this movie in some moments is the over-reliance on what made the first film what it is, which are those jump scares. When I tell you, for as silly goose and geese as these kids were, the dumbest part of this movie is Bughuul popping out of the corner at the fucking end scene.
Yeah.
Sir, your hair sways, and there's something about your vibe that feels comedic every time I see you, even though I know that you're supposed to be terrifying. Please, don't just... He's popping up out of the corner of the frame like in Mortal Kombat, that thing that pops in and says, Justy!
Yeah.
No, sir, just stop. Just stop. I could have done without it, because those jump scares are not as effective as the first film, and I think that's also part of why this movie doesn't get the credit that I think it actually deserves. But I will also say, I plan to rewatch this. I think it offers enough story, enough depth to revisit. I think if you're a fan of the first movie, this is worth seeing through. And I think those snuff films, the home movies alone, are enough to give this movie a second look. Rewatch this without comparing it to the original. I know it's like an almost impossible task, but just see how you feel about this as a movie on its own. It might still be shit for you, but that's fine.
I think that's fair. I mean, I definitely, I just don't understand the hate for this movie, I guess. I do think that this movie is worth a rewatch. I do think it would be fun to watch the first one and this one back to back. I think it's good because you're getting 2 different perspectives. I think you're going from the first one, you're getting the perspective of the husband and his poor choice in being selfish and bringing his family into this murder house and in doing his true crime thing, finding these snuff films and pretty much fucking his entire family. And then we get to the next one and it's a direct continuation, and we get the continuation of a character that we probably didn't know we wanted and we got. And then we get a perspective of the kid this time instead of the dad. And the kid is actually trying to resist this. And then we get the twist of his twin brother being the one that's just the asshole. And I don't know. I liked it. I think it would be a good back-to-back watch, and I would definitely do it.
You've given me the idea, though, where I don't think I would watch this again on its own, just because, I'm giving it credit, but I don't know that it's exactly my thing. But imagine this film, supercut, where we take clips from the first film and make them either flashbacks or part of like, the tapes that we get, or make it the intro scene in some kind of weird edit, basically throwing out 99% of the rest of that movie, I think I would watch that supercut. I think I would appreciate this as being the sole representation of this idea. And I know that's an unpopular opinion because people hate this and they love the first one. The first one wasn't scary. It was boring and long in the tooth. And this one was more fun. And I think with that little bit of a little spice thrown in there, and maybe edit out how often we see the kids or how fully we see the kids, and just never show me Bughuul, and we're good. That would be fun. I would do it.
I think we all have seen the video online where it is Luke and Obi-Wan, Ben at this point, in Tatooine. And he's talking about how Ben knew his dad. And then Ben starts describing his dad. And then all of a sudden in a flashback, it's very quick cuts. While he has his voiceover, we're seeing footage from the first 3 films. And we're talking and seeing the good parts of Anakin and then seeing the bad parts. And then it goes back to, again, that scene in The New Hope. And it's like Obi-Wan's just eyes off in the distance. That's where I think this movie can shine with some kind of supercut. But I think it almost would be way too funny. Because this motherfucking deputy is really talking about how him and Ethan Hawke's character from the first film were friends. And they were acquaintances at best. And I can just imagine this like going way too funny of a route. I think we should try to do this. I think we should try to put this together. We all know people who have copies of films and do things with them they probably shouldn't. I think this should be one of the good deeds that is done for humanity. But until that happens, there you have it, folks. Sinister 2 has shockingly earned a Universal Slash. Now, we've certainly had a robust discussion here, but it doesn't end here by any means.
If you want to come down to the basement and check out some cool home videos, consider supporting the show and go to patreon.com/hackerslash. This is where you can enjoy even more of the show, including bonus content with early access, extended episodes with our B-sides, movie nominations, and live shows.
If you want to make Bughuul happy, leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts. This helps us continue to deliver great content for all you horror fiends out there.
We'll see you next time, folks. And remember, you are not weak.
It's time to find them and finish your movie.